Commander Rock stood on the bridge of the Talon, his scaled fingers drumming against the obsidian command console. The view screen displayed a blue-green world hanging in the void. Unremarkable, except for one detail. It teemed with intelligent life that had never faced a predator species from beyond their atmosphere. Preliminary scout reports confirm it, Commander, Lieutenant Drav said, mandibles clicking with anticipation. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They possess rudimentary space travel but have barely left their own system. Rock's vertical pupils narrowed as he studied the planet. The Vec Dominion had conquered 17 systems in the past solar cycle alone. Their biology made them perfect predators. Enhanced strength, natural armor, superior senses, and instincts, honed through millennia of evolution. The galaxy learned quickly. When the Vec arrived, resistance meant annihilation. Their military capabilities? Rock asked, already calculating resource allocation for minimal effort conquest. Primitive projectile weapons, combustion-based aircraft, and nuclear devices they're afraid to use. Most fascinating is their physical vulnerability, Drav continued, displaying anatomical scans. No armor, weak musculature compared to Vec standards, and limited sensory capacity. The bridge crew chittered with amusement. This would be easier than the avian Chiril, who at least could fly. They appear to compensate with tools and group coordination, the science officer noted. But nothing we haven't seen before. Rock felt the familiar pre-hunt excitement building. The Vec Dominion needed resources and slaves, and this Earth seemed perfect. Their standard approach worked flawlessly. Overwhelm with superior force, break resistance quickly, establish dominance hierarchies among survivors. Establish a forward base on their moon, Rock ordered. I want invasion preparations complete, within 3 rotations. As officers hastened to obey, Rock studied the humans' communications they'd intercepted. Such strange creatures, building complex societies despite being natural prey. They fought among themselves constantly, wasting energy and resources on internal conflicts. How had such beings achieved spaceflight? Commander, we've detected unusual activity, the sensor officer reported. Their primitive orbital instruments have noticed our scout vessels. Irrelevant. They can do nothing with that information, Rock dismissed. Yet something puzzled him as he watched their transmissions. Most species reacted to first contact with either worship or panic. These humans seemed curious. Their communications showed increased activity but organized patterns rather than chaos. Their military forces are mobilizing, Commander, but not fleeing. They appear to be preparing. Rock's crest rose slightly. Preparing. What could prey prepare for when facing the apex predators of the galaxy? They're attempting to communicate with us, communications reported. Ignore them, Rock said. Standard invasion protocol. No communication until after submission. That night in his quarters, Rock reviewed the invasion plan one final time. 17 system conquests had refined their approach to perfection. Strike major population centers simultaneously. Eliminate defensive capabilities. Demonstrate overwhelming force. Resistance typically collapsed within days. Yet as he studied the humans' histories, something nagged at him. These fragile creatures had survived countless natural disasters, diseases, and their own destructive tendencies. Their history was written in blood, mostly their own, yet they persisted. Curious, Rock murmured to himself, but ultimately irrelevant. He sealed the invasion order with his genetic signature. By the next cycle, Earth would belong to the Vec Dominion. Just another conquest in their unstoppable expansion. In the darkness of his quarters, Commander Rock couldn't possibly know that the Vec Dominion was about to encounter something entirely new, a prey species that refused to be hunted. Vec invasion began at dawn across Earth's major cities. Dropships descended through atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot. Defense systems fired desperately, but proved ineffective against Vec shielding technology. Commander Rock watched from orbit, anticipating another swift victory. First wave. Deployed, Commander, Lieutenant Drav reported. Human military response is scattered and disorganized. On tactical displays, Vec shock troops carved through urban centers with brutal efficiency. Their natural armor deflected most human weapons, while their plasma rifles cut through buildings and vehicles alike. The sight was familiar. Rock had witnessed it 17 times before on 17 worlds. Casualty reports? Rock inquired, already planning the resource extraction phase. Minimal on our side. Human losses substantial. Drav's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Their military appears to be retreating from major engagement zones. Rock nodded approvingly. Standard prey behavior, flee from superior predators. The humans would soon realize resistance was futile and surrender. Then the real work would begin, establishing breeding programs for labor forces and organizing resource extraction. 6 hours into the invasion, the first anomaly appeared. Commander, we're seeing unusual patterns in Sector 7, the tactical officer reported, confusion evident in his tone. Humans are returning to areas we've already cleared. Rock leaned forward. Suicidal counterattack? No, sir. Small groups, avoiding direct confrontation. They appear to be recovering their wounded and setting traps. Setting traps? Prey didn't set traps. Predators did. Rock's crest rose with irritation. Eliminate them. All of them. The tactical display shifted to ground-level footage. A Vex squad pursued humans into a partially collapsed structure. Then the entire building imploded, burying the soldiers. Not a random collapse. A calculated sacrifice of infrastructure to inflict casualties. Similar reports began filtering in from across the planet. Human forces were adapting with unsettling speed. They abandoned conventional tactics, instead employing hit-and-run strikes that exploited urban terrain. They used their own vehicles as explosive devices. They seemed to communicate and coordinate despite the Vec jamming their military frequencies. Their central military command appears to be operating from here, intelligence reported, highlighting a mountain facility. Our forces are encountering heavy resistance in the approach. Who leads them? Rock demanded. The display showed intercepted communications, featuring a stern-faced human with gray at the temples. Captain Eldon Gray, Drav translated. Apparently a mid-level officer who's assumed command after we eliminated their higher leadership. Rock studied the human's face. There was something in those eyes. Not fear, but calculation. This Captain Gray fought like a predator, not prey. Target that mountain facility with orbital strikes, Rock ordered. The mountains shuddered under Vec bombardment, but subsequent scans showed deep bunkers had protected the human command structure. Worse, the assault had triggered yet another adaptation. Humans began using the resulting electromagnetic interference to mask their movements. By nightfall, the invasion that should have been nearly complete instead faced unexpected resistance. Vec forces held major cities but found themselves harassed by constant guerrilla attacks. Supply lines were being targeted with devastating precision. This Captain Gray, Rock said, watching another ambush unfold on tactical displays. Bring me everything about him. The dossier showed an unremarkable career. Until now. No exceptional abilities, no special training beyond standard military procedure. Yet somehow, this ordinary human was coordinating a defense that had already cost the Vec more casualties than their last 3 conquests combined. Commander, communications interrupted urgently. We've intercepted a message from Captain Gray to all human forces. The message was brief. Remember what we are. They hunt. We endure. Rock's claws extended unconsciously as a new sensation crept through his predator's mind, the first faint whisper of doubt. Dawn of the 3rd day brought reports that made Commander Rock's scales bristle with agitation. Overnight, humans had modified their primitive weapons with salvaged Vec technology. Suddenly, their projectile firearms could penetrate Vec armor, and they'd adapted their vehicles to disrupt Vec sensory systems. How is this possible? Rock demanded, pacing the command bridge. They've had mere days with our technology. They appear to have remarkable adaptive capacity, the science officer admitted reluctantly. And they're sharing innovations globally. When one group discovers an effective tactic, all human forces implement it within hours. The tactical display showed the consequences. Vec soldiers who had marched confidently through human cities now moved cautiously, ambushed by enemies who seemed to melt into the environment. Humans used their intimate knowledge of terrain to devastating effect, collapsing subway tunnels, beneath Vec patrols and flooding areas to short-circuit Vec technology. They're fighting like vermin, Lieutenant Drav snarled, hiding in the walls of their own civilization. Rock studied footage of a recent engagement. A Vec patrol had cornered human fighters in what should have been a decisive victory. Instead, the humans had somehow anticipated the maneuver, leading the patrol into a prepared killing zone. It wasn't just desperation. It was strategy. "Bring me Captain Gray," Rock ordered suddenly. "Alive." The command caught his officers by surprise. The Vec didn't take prisoners. They took slaves after resistance ended. "You wish to capture their leader?" Drav asked, mandibles twitching with confusion. "I wish to understand," Rock replied simply. "Prepare a special operations team." While the extraction team deployed, Rock reviewed everything they'd learned about humans. Physiologically, they remained unimpressive. No natural weapons, limited strength, vulnerable to environmental extremes. Yet their endocrine system fascinated him. Under threat, their bodies produced compounds that temporarily enhanced performance beyond normal limitations. "Commander, the team reports success," communications announced. "They have Captain Gray and are returning to orbit." Hours later, Rock stood face to face with the human commander. Gray had been secured to an interrogation chair but showed no signs of terror, only measured observation of his surroundings. His resilience was remarkable for a prey species. "Your resistance is admirable but futile," Rock began. "Why continue fighting when surrender would preserve more of your kind?" Gray's eyes, so flat and round compared to Vec vertical pupils, regarded Rock steadily. "Because surrender isn't what we do. Every species surrenders when defeat is inevitable. Then you've never faced humans before." Despite his restraints, Gray projected an unsettling calm. "We've spent our entire evolutionary history overcoming superior predators and impossible odds. It's literally in our DNA." Rock circled the human, noting the extensive injuries Gray had sustained yet seemed to ignore. "Your weapons are inferior. Your bodies are weak. By any objective measure, you should already be conquered." Gray actually smiled, a gesture Rock knew signaled amusement rather than submission. That's what every apex predator on Earth thought too. They're all extinct or domesticated now. For the first time in his military career, Rock felt genuine curiosity about a prey species. How? How does prey overcome predator? "We were never just prey," Gray replied. "We were persistence hunters. When larger predators evolved for short, powerful bursts of speed, we evolved for endurance. We couldn't outfight our enemies, so we outthought them and outlasted them." The human leaned forward against his restraints, his voice dropping. "Your invasion force is impressive, Commander. But ask yourself, are you prepared for a war of attrition against an enemy that specializes in endurance?" As if to punctuate the human's words, alarms blared throughout the ship. Somehow, human forces had targeted their orbital support vessels. Rock stared at the bound human, understanding dawning with terrible clarity. The Vec had evolved as ambush predators, overwhelming force applied decisively. They had never needed to adapt. But these humans, adaptation was their primary survival strategy. "The attack on our orbital platforms was coordinated with your capture," Rock said, reviewing security footage beside the restraint chair where Captain Gray remained secured. "A diversion, or a rescue attempt?" Gray's expression remained neutral. "Just adaptation." The human military leader had been aboard the Talon for 12 hours, during which time Rock had felt his certainty in Vec supremacy steadily eroding. Earth's resistance hadn't diminished with Gray's capture. It had intensified, as if every human suddenly fought with renewed purpose. "You fight without central command," Rock observed. "Your forces continue functioning effectively despite communication disruption." "How?" "Initiative," Gray answered simply. "We train our people to think, not just obey. Your soldiers follow orders perfectly. Until the situation changes. Mine adapt." Rock had begun reviewing Earth's evolutionary history and found himself disturbed by what he discovered. Unlike the Vec, who had always been apex predators, humans had clawed their way up from the middle of the food chain through cooperation and tool use. They hadn't inherited their position, they'd seized it. "You hunt in groups," Rock noted, "like pack predators." "We survived in groups," Gray corrected. "There's a difference. When you're neither the strongest nor the fastest, you learn to be the smartest, and the most stubborn." The ship shuddered slightly. Another attack on their orbital defenses. Gray smiled faintly. "Tell me about your endurance," Rock said, his scientific curiosity overwhelming military protocol. "Humans can outwalk any species on Earth. Before we had weapons, we hunted by simply following prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, so we don't overheat during extended exertion. We can go days without food, weeks with minimal water." Gray's eyes locked with Rock's. "And we can endure suffering unlike any species you've likely encountered." As if to demonstrate, Gray shifted position despite what must have been agonizing pain from his injuries. "Your conquest philosophy is flawed," Gray continued. "You expect species to break quickly under superior force. That works against beings evolved to flee danger. But evolution shaped us differently. Predators flee when the cost becomes too high. Prey doesn't have that luxury. We stand and fight because running wasn't an option." Rock's communication device chittered urgently. "Commander, humans have somehow adapted their orbital satellites to target our logistics vessels. We've lost 3 supply ships in the last hour." "With primitive technology?" Rock demanded. "They've retrofitted their satellites with salvaged weapons from our damaged vessels," came the response. "Lieutenant Drav requests immediate instructions." Rock silenced the communication. "Your people scavenge our technology and improve upon it. Within days. Innovation under pressure, another human specialty," Gray replied. "When existence is threatened, human creativity flourishes." Security footage showed battles across Earth's surface. Vex soldiers still held technological superiority, but humans had neutralized many advantages. They'd covered urban areas with reflective materials to disrupt Vex thermal vision. They'd discovered that certain Earth minerals interfered with Vex sensory organs. They'd even reprogrammed civilian infrastructure to target Vex formations. "You knew we were coming," Rock realized suddenly. "Your people prepared too quickly." Gray nodded. "We detected your scouts months ago. Instead of announcing it publicly and causing panic, we prepared quietly. Your arrival confirmed what we suspected. The galaxy harbors predators. Yet you seem unsurprised by alien life. We've imagined your coming for centuries through what we call science fiction. We've mentally rehearsed this scenario countless times. When you actually arrived, we had cultural frameworks already in place." Rock's crest flattened in disbelief. They had imagined scenarios specifically for alien invasion? Had prepared psychologically for generations? "Commander," communications interrupted again, more urgently. "We're detecting massive energy signatures from Earth's surface. They've somehow weaponized their power distribution infrastructure." Gray's smile widened slightly. "Like I said, adaptation." For the first time in his career, Commander Rock of the Vex Dominion found himself reconsidering a conquest strategy. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were learning, evolving their tactics in real time. He faced an unsettling possibility. What if the Vex weren't the predators in this encounter? Commander Rock stood before the ship's strategic display, watching as human resistance spread across continents like wildfire. More disturbing was the new development highlighted in red across tactical screens. The Chiril were fighting alongside humans. The avian Chiril had been conquered by the Vex 3 cycles ago. Their wings clipped literally and figuratively as they were reduced to servitude. Now, somehow, Earth's defenders had made contact with Chiril laborers brought for the colonization phase, and those once broken slaves were rising up. How did they communicate with the Chiril? Rock demanded. Their languages share no common basis. Unknown, Commander, the intelligence officer replied. But they appear to have established rudimentary understanding within hours of contact. Footage showed humans and Chiril fighting together, the humans providing strength and endurance, while the Chiril, even with damaged wings, provided aerial reconnaissance and diverted Vex attention. The two species had no evolutionary connection, no shared history, yet they coordinated as if they'd fought together for generations. Rock returned to the interrogation chamber where Captain Gray remained secured, though with improved medical treatment, at Rock's orders. Scientific curiosity demanded the human remain alive and coherent. Your people have allied with the Chiril, Rock stated. Explain. Gray appeared unsurprised by this information. You see other species as either predators or prey. We see potential friends. The concept is meaningless, Rock dismissed. Evolutionary imperatives drive all species to prioritize their own survival. That narrow thinking is why you're losing. Commander. Gray shifted in his restraints. Humans learned long ago that cooperation extends beyond species boundaries. We domesticated wolves, apex predators, and transformed them into dogs, our most loyal companions. We've formed symbiotic relationships with countless species on Earth. Rock's crest flattened with irritation. The Chireel are a conquered species. They should fear punishment, not ally with doomed resistance. Hope is stronger than fear, Gray replied simply. We offered them something you never did. Respect as equals. The concept seemed absurd to Rock's predator mind. The Vec Dominion's conquests followed natural law. The strong dominated the weak. Yet here was evidence that cooperation between disparate species could generate effective resistance against superior technology and biology. The Chireel have shown other subjugated species how to disable their control implants, the tactical officer reported through Rock's communicator. We're seeing coordinated rebellion among the Emirate laborers in 3 urban centers. The Emirate, insectoid, engineers brought to assist with resource extraction, were now apparently helping humans target Vec weak points. Their chitinous manipulators, evolved for precision work, were perfect for modifying human weapons. They're all working together, Rock murmured, the implications staggering. That's humanity's true evolutionary advantage, Gray said quietly. We unite, against natural disasters, against disease, against common threats. We argue and fight among ourselves constantly, but threaten all humans, and we become one tribe. Reports continued flowing in. Humans had somehow communicated with the aquatic Selk, maintenance workers for Vec water systems. Now water treatment facilities were becoming death traps for Vec soldiers. The reptilian Zun, brought as heavy laborers, were using their natural strength to move obstacles humans couldn't, creating new defensive positions. You've created an alliance of prey, Rock said, struggling to comprehend the rapidly changing, strategic situation. We've created an alliance of people, Gray corrected. We recognized something you missed, that intelligence, self-awareness, and the desire for freedom cross all species boundaries. Rock reassessed everything he thought. He understood about galactic conquest. The Vec had always attacked worlds individually, isolating species before subjugating them. They had never faced a species capable of building instant rapport with others, of creating impromptu coalition forces from disparate biological types. Commander, Lieutenant Drav's voice came through urgently. The Dominion Council demands a status update. They're questioning the delay in securing the planet. Rock silenced the communication. How could he possibly explain to the Council that the Vec approach to galactic conquest, unchanged for centuries, had fundamentally failed against beings they had dismissed as easy prey? Your Council won't understand what's happening here, Gray said, as if reading Rock's thoughts. Predators rarely do, until it's too late. Outside the interrogation chamber, alarms sounded as another orbital platform reported critical damage. The Vec weren't just failing to advance, they were losing ground. Commander, Gray continued, his voice level but intense. There's still time to end this without further bloodshed. Rock turned slowly to face the human. Are you proposing surrender? I'm proposing evolution, Gray answered. Even apex predators must adapt or die. The Vec command ship shuddered as another human-modified missile struck its lower hull. Commander Rock steadied himself against the tactical display, watching as red warning indicators multiplied across the screen. 6 days into what should have been a routine conquest, the Vec Dominion faced unprecedented defeat. Status report, Rock demanded, his voice tight with controlled fury. Lieutenant Drav's usually impeccable appearance had deteriorated, scales dulled from stress and lack of rest. Our ground forces are retreating from all major population centers. The human-alien coalition forces have captured 3 of our forward bases. Worst of all, they've somehow transmitted override codes to our slave implant networks. That last development was catastrophic. Across Earth, subjugated species from a dozen conquered worlds were suddenly free of Vec control, beings selected specifically for their specialized skills, strength, technical aptitude, environmental adaptation, now turned those same abilities against their former masters. The Council is demanding direct communication, Communications, reported nervously. Rock straightened his posture. Put them through. The holographic projection showed 7 Elder Vec, their scales showing the distinctive patterning of the ruling caste. Their expressions conveyed what all Vec understood instinctively: displeasure with a failed hunt. Commander Rock, the Central Elder began without preamble. Explain how primitive mammals have resisted the Dominion for 6 days. Rock chose his words carefully. The humans possess unusual characteristics. Their adaptive capacity exceeds anything we've encountered. They've formed cooperative relationships with our labor species and— Excuses, the Elder cut him off. Your mission was simple. Secure the planet, extract resources, establish breeding programs. The same mission we've completed 17 times previously. This species is different, Rock insisted. They don't respond to standard conquest protocols. They are prey, another Elder interrupted. All non-Vec are prey. This is the fundamental truth upon which our expansion is built. Rock hesitated, then made a decision that would change the course of Vec history. With respect, Elders, I believe that assumption is flawed. The humans aren't prey as we understand it. They're persistence predators with psychological and social adaptations that make them uniquely dangerous. Silence fell over the council chamber. Challenging foundational Vec beliefs was unprecedented. You've been contaminated by proximity to these creatures, the Central Elder finally said. Your command is terminated. Return to the Dominion for reconditioning. A replacement will complete this conquest. The transmission ended abruptly. Lieutenant Drav stared at Rock, mandibles slack with shock. Commander. Rock moved decisively toward the interrogation chamber. Captain Gray looked up as he entered, immediately sensing something had changed. Your council didn't appreciate your report, Gray observed. They've relieved me of command, Rock confirmed. A replacement will arrive who will show no restraint. They'll use extinction protocols rather than risk further embarrassment. Gray's expression hardened. How long do we have? We? Rock questioned. You said they, not we, Gray pointed out. You've chosen a side, Commander. Had he? Rock considered. The past 6 days, the countless observations of human ingenuity, courage, and most surprisingly, compassion. They fought ferociously, but treated captured Vec soldiers with unexpected mercy. They killed when necessary, but preferred rehabilitation, even for species that had participated in their subjugation. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Lieutenant Drav burst into the chamber. Commander, human forces have breached our lower decks. They're accompanied by all the labor species. Even the Dzun are fighting alongside them. The Dzun, reptilians nearly as strong as the Vec themselves, had been considered perfectly subjugated for generations. Their rebellion was unthinkable. Rock made his decision. He deactivated Gray's restraints. What are you doing? Drav demanded, hand moving to his weapon. Evolving, Rock answered simply. Lieutenant, the Dominion Council has ordered extinction protocols against Earth. Can you accept that order? Drav hesitated, mandibles working silently as he processed the implications. Finally, he lowered his hand from his weapon. I cannot, Commander. Gray stood, rubbing circulation back into his limbs. How long until your replacement arrives? 2 days at maximum speed, Rock answered. Not long enough for your coalition to develop counters to extinction weaponry. Then we need to take control of your fleet now, Gray said. Not just to save Earth, but to save every species the Vec have subjugated. Rock nodded slowly. You're suggesting rebellion against the Dominion itself. I'm suggesting evolution, Gray replied, echoing Rock's earlier words. Even apex predators must adapt or face extinction. Throughout the ship, the sounds of battle grew closer. Not just humans fought in the corridors, but a coalition of species, former enemies united against common oppression. Rock saw with sudden clarity what Captain Gray had understood from the beginning. Strength came not from domination, but from cooperation. Commander, communications called urgently. We're receiving surrender requests from 12 Vec vessels. Their crews are refusing extinction orders. The impossible was happening. The Vec, evolutionary predators with instincts honed across millions of years, were choosing alliance over domination. It seems, Rock said to Gray as they moved together, toward the command bridge. that humans aren't the only species capable of adaptation. 1 month after what historians would later call First Contact Day, Commander Rock stood beside Captain Gray on a hillside overlooking what had once been a battleground. Now it served as a meeting place where representatives from 27 species, former conquerors and conquered alike, gathered to forge a new kind of galactic community. The Council fleet will arrive within the week, Rock noted, watching clouds drift across Earth's blue sky. They've dispatched 17 battlecruisers, Gray nodded calmly, and we'll have 23 ships waiting for them, crewed by volunteers from every liberated species, plus Earth's re-engineered orbital defenses. The transformation had been remarkable. Once Rock and his loyalists had abandoned the Dominion's conquest doctrine, knowledge and technology flowed freely among species. Innovations multiplied exponentially as different evolutionary perspectives tackled shared problems. VEC tactical expertise combined with human creativity and the specialized adaptations of other species created defensive capabilities that would have been impossible for any single species to develop. They still don't understand what happened here, Rock said. The Council believes you used some form of mind control on my forces. Gray laughed, a sound Rock had initially found jarring but now appreciated for its honesty. They can't comprehend that cooperation might be more powerful than coercion. Below them, a human child played with a young Chiril, the avian's wings finally regenerating thanks to MRIT medical techniques, combined with human stem cell therapy. Nearby, VEC engineers worked alongside humans to modify Dominion technology for peaceful applications. Former enemies now collaborated without hesitation. In 17 conquests, Rock observed, we never once asked what we might learn from other species. We saw only resources to be extracted, never partners with unique perspectives. That's the real difference between us, Gray replied. Humans never forgot our vulnerability. We remember being prey, so we understand the value of working together against larger threats. A small delegation approached them, representatives from the newly formed Galactic Cooperation Council. Among them walked Lieutenant Drav, now Ambassador Drav, his once dull scales now gleaming with health and purpose. The communications array is ready, Drav reported. We can now broadcast to all Dominion worlds simultaneously. Are you certain about this approach? Rock asked Gray. The Council will view it as an ultimate provocation. Information is the one thing they can't stop, Gray answered. Once other subjugated worlds see what's possible, alliance instead of domination, the old model collapses under its own weight. The delegation continued toward the broadcast center, leaving Rock and Gray alone again on the hillside. There's something I still don't understand, Rock admitted. When I had you captive, when our victory still seemed certain, you showed no fear. Not because you didn't understand the danger, but because you'd already accepted it. Gray nodded slowly. Humans live with our mortality constantly. We know from birth that we'll die someday. It gives us perspective that immortal-minded conquerors often lack. You speak of death as if it's an advantage. Awareness of death focuses the mind wonderfully, Gray said with a slight smile. It makes us value each moment, each connection, each discovery. Why do you think we explore so restlessly? Why we create art? Why we form bonds with anyone who reaches out in friendship? Rock considered this. The VEC had conquered out of biological imperative, expanding without purpose beyond domination. Humans explored out of curiosity, created out of joy, and connected out of genuine desire for understanding. The Council believes predators rule the galaxy by natural law, Rock said finally. But they misunderstood what makes a true apex species. Which is? Not the ability to kill, but the ability to transcend your evolutionary programming. Rock gestured toward the gathering below. To choose cooperation when instinct demands competition. As if proving his point, a VEC scientist working with human colleagues looked up from her project, spotted Rock and Gray on the hillside, and raised her hand in a distinctly human gesture of greeting. Rock returned it, feeling none of the dissonance such an action would have caused a month ago. When your council arrives, Gray said, they'll find something they never expected. What's that? A galaxy that no longer fears them. Species that stand together rather than fleeing separately. Gray turned to face his former enemy, now ally. And they'll discover what you already have: that humans make better friends than victims. In the valley below them, representatives of 27 species continued building something unprecedented in galactic history: a civilization based on mutual respect rather than dominance hierarchies. The Vec had arrived as invincible predators, only to discover that humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage wasn't physical at all. It was the ability to transform enemies into allies. As the sun set over Earth, a planet that had nearly become another conquered world, Rock realized that the Dominion's 17 previous conquests hadn't made them masters of the galaxy. They had merely delayed the inevitable lesson that humanity now taught. True strength comes not from subjugating others, but from standing together against the darkness. Predators feared nothing, until they learned there was something more powerful than fear itself. The end.